The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Oshkosh Diaries. I'm Paul Esslinger, joined of course by co-host Derek Kloiber. Today we have a very special guest, arguably is probably one of the most influential people in the city of Oshkosh at this time, and he's been there for quite a few years. This gentleman deals with political people, city council members, school board members, county board members, assembly people, senators, both statewide and at the national level. Deals with business owners, bank presidents, lawyers, doctors, and basically anyone that has anything to do with the city of Oshkosh keeping the wheels turning. This guy deals with them pretty much on a daily basis. So I'd like you to help me welcome John Casper. John, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
All right.
Sure.
So let's start with John when he was a little boy. Where did John? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Grew up in the middle of 9 children. On a dairy farm in rural St. Nazianz, Manitowoc County. It's right on the fringe of the Holy Land, so it's if you go directly, I don't know how many miles towards Lake Michigan east of here, you eventually hit Wisconsin. Wisconsin.
The lake.
St. Nazianz.
Oh, okay.
So.
All right.
So quite a large family on a farm. You mentioned. What was the dynamic there as far as how you were raised?
Well, we learned how to work real early in life. Everyone had their part to do. There were 4 boys and 5 girls in our family, and plus my mom and dad. So we all had our chores that we had to do, and the guys were responsible for a lot of the outdoor chores on the farm itself, whether it was milking cows, preparing the harvest, picking rocks, those sorts of things. One thing with my descendants, when they came from Germany and settled here, I think they went out and they found the hilliest, rockiest pieces of real estate that they could find, and they thought, hey, this would be a good place to raise crops and cattle and do dairy farming. So I kind of question why they do that. I think there should have been a gravel pit, but across the street was a gravel pit, actually. So
right.
I tried to convince my dad to get into that business, and he had none of it. I think he'd rather have us just work and keep out of trouble.
Right.
So.
Well, as any parent, I guess, would.
Right.
So is it true? I mean, you're a farmer, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning? Whether
it was my dad would start getting us out of bed about 5:15, and by the time we got around to actually getting out of bed, it was about 5:30. So every day it was 5:30. 365 days out of the year.
Yeah.
One of us had to go out there and help him. He also worked outside of farming too. He worked at Tecumseh Products in New Holstein. So he would kind of get it going and come in, get cleaned up, get ready to go to work. He'd be at work at 7 o'clock, and we'd finish that with my mother, and then we'd be off to school during the school year and off to doing some project he had us to work on during the summer.
So did you have your daily chore? Was John assigned to something, and brothers and sisters were assigned to something else?
Well, it was all the same thing. It was pretty much a routine. You get up, you milk your cows, and feed them and clean. After in late afternoon, and then go through that whole routine. So it was pretty much that every day of my life growing up.
Okay.
So,
next question.
Quite a few siblings. Where did you fall into the whole rank of the siblings? And are your siblings still in the area?
I was a middle child. so that explains a lot, maybe.
Yeah.
But my family is kind of scattered across the country. I mean, I have a sister who and her husband and family are in southern California, Costa Mesa area. They reside in, and then I had another sister who's on the East Coast. They recently moved back to the Quad Cities, and but a good share of my dad is still alive and living in St. Nazianz. And I have several brothers and sisters that are still living in that area. So it's we do get together on occasion. I also have a brother actually in Rochester, Minnesota, and he's gone through Minnesota. His family grew up in that, or he raised his family in the Minnesota area. So we get together once in a while and have a good time.
So did you have the sibling rivalries? Did you get beat up by your brothers, or did you beat them up? Or
Well, I was kind of, being that middle child, you're kind of, you're not quite in the older, group of kids, and you don't want to be part of the younger kids. So, so I was always kind of in that torn situation. So, but yeah, it's like any other family. It must have drove my mother crazy to keep us all. Kind of keep us on the straight and narrow, and so I'm sure she had her challenges. I mean, I have 2 kids, and that's tough enough. I couldn't imagine 9 kids in a farmhouse with 1 bathroom. I mean, if you can imagine that.
One bathroom.
One bathroom.
Farmhouse.
Yes, farmhouse.
Wow.
So it's you get up, you get in there, you do your business, and you get the heck out of there. So.
Yeah. So when did you? Well, let's go into your schooling. Pretty average schooling when you started in elementary school. I mean, was it a one-room?
No, it wasn't quite that bad. But I went to a Catholic school for the first 8 years of my life, and was taught by some interesting nuns who really taught you. Sister Joselda was my favorite, believe it or not. So
Sister Joselda.
Sister Joselda, yes. I saw her not too long ago. Father Carr. I don't know. You remember Father Carr?
Absolutely.
He was my 4th grade teacher.
No kidding.
Before he became a priest, and when I went to his funeral when he passed away a few years ago, and Sister Joselda was there and delivered the eulogy. When I was a kid, I thought she was old. Can you imagine? But she's still doing the good work of what Father Carr actually started, and is carrying on a lot of that stuff on his behalf. So we had an interesting. I went to church every day, growing up through 8th grade, and I think in my class we had 20 kids, 3 boys and the rest were girls. So
lucky you, huh?
Well, maybe, I don't know, but
that's a double-edged sword,
but we
right?
still were taught by nuns. So. But it was a good, solid Catholic education that we had. And
so I'm assuming I know you're probably a couple years older than me. So you started school basically in the late '60s, and went through school in the '70s when school was a little different for us back then. There was actually discipline but now and then going to a Catholic school. I'm sure it probably had a pretty short reign, short leash.
We had discipline, all right. I remember getting walloped by Sister Joselda with an umbrella one day.
An umbrella.
Yes, and I don't know. I'm sure whatever I did, I deserved it. But you get a good whack across the butt, and that'll get your attention.
Yeah, it got your attention. Yeah.
So between the schooling, working the farm, long hours, long days, there had to have been some time for fun. So what was there for fun to do around those parts?
Well, one thing, I was always very fortunate. My parents always encouraged us and allowed us to get involved with sports. So I played football, baseball, basketball, and we always were allowed to make sure we could participate in that, which made the farm life a little more bearable, and it actually made school life a little more bearable too. So, I think baseball is probably my first love, because my dad was always our little league coach, for example.
Oh, okay.
So he had to make sure his kids were good players, good ball players, and so we worked at that quite a bit growing up. And so come summertime, I mean that was it. You lived and breathed baseball, and So every night we'd either have, having that many kids, you could always get a game going just in the backyard, playing catch or batting practice, fielding practice, that sort of thing. And but always look forward to our weekly games. We played in the sheriff's department in Manitowoc County. Always ran the Little League program, so we always played in that. And then come fall time, we didn't have. I didn't really play football, organized football, until I got into high school. But certainly played 4 years of football there, 4 years of baseball, and also played basketball. I went to high school in Valders High School, which is a public school there, and I don't know. Valders had a kind of a dynasty in terms of basketball after I played, not while I played. My basketball coach was a few years ago was inducted to the Lakeshore Hall of Fame because he compiled. He brought 3 teams to the state championship. During his tenure. Compiled, I think it was several hundred wins during his career and like 50 losses. And I looked at those 50 losses, and I think the teams I played for counted for about 35 of those losses. So, but it was always, we were always prepared for those games and winning every game, believing we were going to win.
Sure.
And it was just a very good experience, and it really helps you even in life. Working, playing on a team and understanding, how the team needs to work together.
Sure.
Okay. Well, so, growing up, being a middle kid and living in a smaller community, you probably knew everyone, if not everyone in the community, but the nearby communities. Did you see that as an advantage or a disadvantage? I mean, you probably weren't able to get in too much trouble because everyone knew you and you couldn't get away with anything, could you?
Living in the country, you don't get out that much either, So, when it came to, going out, it was church on Sundays, and so recreational wise, occasionally, once a year you had the fireman's picnic and that kind of stuff, but it was a small community, so people always knew where you were, who got into trouble, and there's nothing that you could get by your parents.
Right.
I know.
Right.
I know several times they caught us doing stuff, and I go, how in the heck, how could that happen, But it does happen. I think the first time we went out in the woods to have a smoke as kids. I think my mother found out right away. Before we got home, I think she found out that happened. So.
Any beer parties attending?
Well, there's that's part of the culture back. Those things. I think entertainment was always wrapped around having, consuming a beer or two. But certainly at that time, drinking age was 18. It was a little different than what it is. A little different than it is right now. So, but yeah, that's ingrained in the culture. So very, very, very heavy German culture over there.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. Anything?
Mentioned that area of the state now. Is it very tight-knit? You mentioned the German culture, the Holy Land, of course, over there. How ingrained is that culture in that area? I mean, is there some factions almost?
Well, I don't know if it's that so much. I mean, but there's certainly a dialect over there that's far different than it is on this side of the lake. The terrain is different. I mean, if you just take a look at, there's this side of Lake Winnebago is flat. That side is hilly, and it's far different that way. But when I go back Christmas time and that sort of thing, it's kind of like going back to things don't change that much,
right?
And especially in a small town.
So when you're getting into middle school now and then into high school, were there classes in? When did you start saying John Casper is going to be a president and CEO of a chamber of commerce? I mean, did you have when did that start coming into your head? What you wanted to do, and what did your schooling have to do with that?
Well, I think anybody who works at a chamber, they're there accidentally. I mean, there is. I don't think many people grow up and say, I'm going to go work for a chamber of commerce. Most people don't know what a chamber of commerce is, and and a chamber is different from community to community. But I've after, in all honesty, going through high school, I had really no aspiration to go on to school. It was kind of assumed that most people would either, if they're working a farm, stay on the farm. Our farm was a small farm, first of all, and that was something I never wanted to do. But I just assumed I'd be working, getting a production job someplace. So after high school, I didn't even go on to school. I worked as an aluminum foundry in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, aluminum foundry, and poured aluminum for a period of time. And found out, I think one day there, I found out real fast what I did not want to do the rest of my life, working that foundry. And I think that next day I went over to the UW Extension campus in Manitowoc and enrolled. I picked up a class that fall and spring semester. But I kept working because if I was going to go on to school, I had to put myself through school. And so I did that for a period of time, and then went to Tecumseh Products in New Holstein. They manufactured lawnmower and snowblower engines, and I worked there as an expediter for a period of time. And that work is very seasonal, and I think right before the beginning of summer I got laid off. So I spent, that was my summer where I think I played 120 softball games.
Wow.
That summer. So we played Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in leagues, and then pick up tournaments every weekend. So, but went on to school here in Oshkosh and got my degree, and went on to graduate school and worked on my MBA here in Oshkosh, and never finished my MBA, but...
You ever get back to the homestead? I know your dad is there yet. Do you get back there much?
Yeah, usually a couple times a year. Christmas time, we all seem to try to get everybody together. I think this year we're trying to get everyone together. My sister lives in Neenah. She's the curriculum director for Neenah High School. So she's moving into a new house, and we're going to try to have a little family get together. And I think my extended family has a reunion in St. Asians this year.
Yeah.
Whether I go to that or not, I'm not sure.
So you mentioned your experience, at the foundry, and my dad also worked in a foundry too, and he said, "Trust me, you don't want to do that." But before that, when you were in school, did you say to yourself, was it your idea that you knew you were going to leave there, and did you have any plan? Where did you want to go?
I can't say that I was much of a planner back then.
Okay.
So, when I said a lot of times careers, people get into careers by accident.
Yeah.
It's certainly that. If you take a look at, high school guidance, career exploration back in the late 70s, there wasn't any. For the most part, I think at that time, people were just trying to hope. Schools were just trying to get kids through. I think my graduating class, very few people went on to universities or even technical colleges, for that matter. That time it was far more prevalent to just go right into the world of work and work at Manitowoc Engineering or Manitowoc Company or Tecumseh or whatever were the big employers in that area. So. A lot of kids did that. Some did go on to into the military and that sort of thing. But after a lot of my close friends did go on to school, and I thought, there's got to be something more than just that. And not that that's a bad thing. It's a noble thing to do. And but I just kind of wanted something different. And I'm glad I did that because I met my wife here and that sort of thing, and created an opportunity for myself that I wouldn't have had if I would have just kind of stayed pat where I was.
Right. Okay. Well, with that, John, we're going to take our first break. So stay with us when we come back. We learned a little bit about John when he's younger, and we're going to get a little older with John in a little bit. So stay with us.
On the surface, the simple pleasures in life are going on all around us. But inches beneath the surface, utility lines are carrying electricity, gas, and more to your home. Digger's Hotline helps avoid costly or dangerous mistakes. It doesn't matter how deep you're digging. Call 811 or click diggershotline.com 3 working days before you start your project, and we'll help take the risk out of digging. Protect your simple pleasures. Know what's below.
There is a place where history is captured in time, where the voices of past generations still discuss the days of success, of love, hope, and joy. Timeless, playful,
Welcome to my attic.
memorable. The Oshkosh Public Museum. Come for the sights, stay for the memories.
Hello and welcome back to Oshkosh Diaries. We're sitting down with John Casper, the CEO and President of the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. In the first segment, learned a little bit about John in the younger years. So let's get into John. When did you leave the home, and when did you arrive here in Oshkosh?
Actually, I came to Oshkosh. I was 19 years old, enrolled at the university here in Oshkosh, and I remember that very vividly, driving my '69 Chevy Impala.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, it was a nice ride. Into Oshkosh. First of all, just to register and schedule classes, and I just vividly remember driving up Highway 45 and making that turn by Artie and Ed's.
Yep.
And pulling up to the end of, I think it's 24th Street, and seeing this big Oshkosh truck sign. And I thought to myself, man, they must be a big employer. They must be a big deal.
Mm-hmm, right.
Never realizing that I'd be maybe in a position that I'd be running the chamber at some point, and knowing those guys pretty well.
Yeah.
But then driving down, and I do recall the Morgan Door property, and then they had that walkway
yeah.
over the street, and thought that was kind of interesting, and found my way onto campus, and did that. Went through the enrollment process and all the things that go along with that. But and it was so. I mean, that whole summer I was kind of looking forward to, because a lot of my close friends did go on to school someplace, and kind of looking to start a new thing.
So you were the little town guy. You arrive in the big city here.
Yeah.
In your '69 Chev. Was it an awe-inspiring? I mean, you saw the Oshkosh truck, Oshkosh Corporation.
Well, it was kind of my first night here. Was when I woke up that first morning. We had our windows open, and I had the smell of the foundry, because the foundry was operating. That was right down on right across the street where the chamber is.
Yeah.
And I woke up and I thought, oh my God, I had a bad dream. I'm still working at the foundry. And I woke up and I realized, I saw my roommate across the way, and I said, okay, I'm here. But he was a sophomore, so he kind of showed me around a little bit. One of the first people I met, actually, we went down to Main Street, went to the Exclusive Company.
Oh yeah.
And it was the first time I met Mr. G.
Right.
Mr. G and Betty.
What year was this?
That was 1979, I believe.
Okay. So you are a lot older than me then.
I don't know. It's some days I look in the mirror and I go, oh my God, who's that white-haired guy there? But I'm prematurely white.
Right.
So.
Just for the record, when I first met you, you had black hair.
I had dark hair at one time.
But then you had to deal with people like me, and then it all changes. But anyway.
Well, it's I always tell my wife I met her. That's when I started turning gray. I started turning gray when I was 21. So it's my mother had the same problem, but
Okay.
she corrected it, and you wouldn't have known that. But no, I got a quick assimilation into the university, and got to know a bunch of people, and it was a great experience.
So you probably went to business school, right? I mean.
No, I didn't. I graduated with a criminal justice degree.
Really?
And had aspirations to become an attorney, and actually went to Drake Law School at Drake University in Des Moines, and found out real fast that profession in becoming an attorney was not for me.
Why is that?
Well, I just I just didn't enjoy it. It wasn't. It was certainly challenging. I mean, it was very very difficult. But I didn't think it was the right thing for me to do. And when I left there, they didn't seem to mind either. When I left, they didn't.
Right.
They didn't shed many tears.
They didn't have a party for you or anything?
No. Well, maybe they did have a party for me.
But you weren't
after,
invited.
but I wasn't there. But I came back here and then enrolled in the MBA program at the university, and thought going and getting some business background was a good thing. And I tell people that it doesn't matter what degree you get, but you should have some business background. I mean, you should take, you should always take some accounting classes, some finance classes, marketing and economics classes, because it doesn't matter where you end up, if you're in government, social services, that sort of thing. Having that background at some point, you got to be able to pick up a P&L and understand that, and understand its relationship to the balance sheet and those sorts of things. So. So I thought that was a deficiency I had, and I thought I should really go back and bone up on that.
Okay.
So about 35 years ago, give or take, you first came to Oshkosh. In that time since, what's the biggest thing you think you've seen change in Oshkosh as a community?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think there's some attitude changes certainly that's occurring. I think when I first got a little more involved with the community, I think it's far more conservative than it is now.
Absolutely.
And that has changed a lot. I mean, think about the politics of just the in Oshkosh here. I mean, I think years ago, if you were running for state office, for example, and ran as a Republican, you're going to win. You're going to win, and that's changed a lot. Since I think Greg Underheim, I think, was the last time we had a Republican assembly person represent Oshkosh. And so that's, and a lot of that I think has to do with the university and its presence here, which is a good thing certainly. And we have more state institutions here as the fabric of the community, and it brings a different certainly a different perspective and that sort of thing. I think what the university has done along the river has just been amazing. If I take a look at the north side of the river, I mean, that's gone through such a transition over the last couple of years. When I was first going to school here, I remember the old Deltox site.
Yep.
And you couldn't even, if you wanted to get to the river, just to kind of have that experience. I mean, you had to trudge through tall grass, swampy. It was not an easy journey. But now with what they've done with the Health and Wellness Center, and now the Alumni and Welcome Center. I was out there just Tuesday night. We had an event out there, and I was just looking towards the city center and looking out and looking at what they did with the old Radford site and parts over there. I mean, it just looks it's just a huge change. And if you don't really take a step back and reflect about some of the things that we've the way it was just 20 years ago. I mean, it's just made some remarkable change, and which has been real positive, because I think it demonstrates that Oshkosh can do some things, and it creates a level of confidence that when you'll get support from the local community and also local government to help you do those things.
So going back to when you were in school here, John, working your way through school and taking these classes. Was there someone, you said you had a roommate that was a sophomore and kind of showed you the ropes there a little bit, but was there someone that kind of took you under your wing, or was this John, he was in it by himself and
I was
waded through the waters?
I was in it by myself. I mean, I got here myself. I paid it for myself. I think my dad, dropped me off one day, but and not that he didn't care. He just he was just kind of busy. I was out there by myself, and actually, and that was fine. I mean, I didn't miss many parties. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
So that's a really easy way of getting to know people real fast. But I got involved with. I was a CA while I was on campus. I did that for 2.5 years, and part of that is I want to get a little more involved, and it was kind of a good resume builder. At the same time, I had to figure out ways to get myself through school. So being a CA, they paid for your room and board.
Right.
So so all I was responsible for was my tuition, and at that time, my son's a freshman up here now, and I signed that check. Every semester, and when I was a freshman, I think my first tuition was $475.
$475.
And now I think that's about what you can buy one credit for.
Yeah, or the books are about.
Or the books is $400. Yeah.
So what was the first job? Where was your first desk? What was your first job where this was, you knew you were in? The schooling's done now, and John's a big shot. Where was he?
I don't know if I was ever a big shot. I worked actually for a commercial development company here in Oshkosh. The company syndicated real estate projects. We bought, similar to what you're doing, but for commercial business kind of things. We did apartment buildings, office buildings, mobile home parks, those sorts of things. And I did that for about 2.5 years. At a time when, if you can recall, early to mid 80s, I mean, the economy was tough. I mean, the interest rates were double digits, and it was not easy to do those sorts of transactions. And so at that time, I did that for a while, managed some of the properties for the company. And then decided to go into the radio business. I did. I'm following your footsteps, actually.
That's nice.
Yeah.
How are those footsteps to follow in?
Well, it was a good learning experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I sold radio advertising for a standalone AM station in Appleton, WYNE, which is no longer on the air, but it was a country station, and at the time when country was just starting to gain some popularity. The good news is we were the only country station up there, so we had a market and niche that that you could kind of capitalize on. But you're in the midst of a pretty competitive marketplace of 26 other radio stations, 3 network affiliated TV stations. Newspapers at that time were strong.
Yes.
And buyer's guides and that sort of thing. So it was a tough market, but.
Now, I'm supposing that you were paid heavily on commission, if not 100%?
100% commission, right.
So that's a rewarding day when you wake up and you realize that you have to pound the pavement or someone's going to pound you. And, working in the advertising business, going in and asking people for money all the time, that's a special job too, isn't it?
It shows what you're made of, let me tell you. And but yeah, you had to produce or else you didn't get paid. I mean, that's kind of just the way it was, and and that was fine. I mean, you could give yourself a raise every day if you wanted a raise.
That's what my boss always told me too.
Yeah, and but it kind of taught you of if you were just out there just selling time. Everybody's selling time. I mean, and you're gonna get beat up. So I learned real quick. You better come up with some good ideas and why people should be advertising and how you can help them and how your particular station can reach a specific market that they're looking for. And it was a real challenging thing. So it's I like I said, I did that for 2 years. And one day, having a bad day, I went to. Actually, I went to the library in Appleton, and I was looking through the Post-Crescent looking for some, advertising leads, and came across this little ad in the want ads for the Oshkosh Chamber was looking for a director of commercial development. Wanted somebody with a marketing background and a real estate background, and I thought, I could do that. So I applied, and I got the job.
And who was running the chamber then when you got there?
Tim Casey was the president at that time, and Tim had a kind of a dual role. He ran Chamco, and he also ran the Chamber of Commerce. And at that time, when I was hired, it was all under the chamber umbrella. And so there would be times I would be working on industrial projects and sometimes on commercial projects, and he, vice versa. And we utilize resources the best we can that way. And Tim did a nice job. I think he was very responsible for the for Bemis Company being here. I think that was one of the first projects he was responsible for. Chamco had a spec building that was on the market, and Bemis came in and said, we'd like to have that building. And so take a look at what has grown from there.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions, Jerry?
No.
Okay. So you're working at the Chamber now, economic development. What year did you start there then?
I started in 1987.
Okay.
And I did the economic, it was OCDC at that time. And I did the commercial development programming for the Chamber. And that time it was more retail, commercial development, downtown revitalization programs and that sort of thing. And did that for about 2.5 years. And then Tim got a job as the Director of Economic Development for Milwaukee County.
Okay.
And at that time, the Chamber went out on a search process, and I think they hired a gentleman from Sheboygan, and it didn't quite gel. I think he did that for about 3 or 4 months, and they realized it wasn't a good fit. And yeah, they recognized that early, and he was a good guy, and I think he had some good ideas. It just wasn't right. So instead of them going out on another recruitment process, they came to me and said, "Hey, how would you like to try this?"
That's nice.
Yeah,
that's really nice. That doesn't happen a lot.
It doesn't happen a lot. So I mean, I have nothing to lose. So of course, I said yes. And I think the fortunate part of that is, when Tim was there, Tim did a good job. The guy who followed him, had a couple issues, and I think they didn't want to go through another transition, because I think, leading up to that, I think we had 4 or 5 different Chamber executives. Every 2 or 3 years there was somebody new there. So they were hoping to, have something a little more stable. And why that was good for me is people got around and rallied around that because they didn't want that to fail. They wanted to make sure that Chamber would have some of that leadership stability. And, so people rallied around and helped out, and to this day still help me out.
Okay. We got a couple minutes before our next break, John. So you've been at the Chamber for a few years, and then you take over the role as the director, president, CEO. You kind of wet behind the ears, a little green, and you had a vision of what, running a Chamber was going to be. Now, let's fast forward to today. Compare and contrast what you thought it was. Was it what you thought it was, or were you disillusioned, or?
No, it's been the one of the best experiences I've ever had. I don't think I'd still be here if it weren't.
And what year did you take over then?
I believe it was 1990. I took over as the president's role at that time. But yeah, it was. We're a business association. Primarily we represent, provide programs for the business community. We have an active role in economic and business development, which is kind of where I kind of came into the organization on that side of it. But there's really distinct businesses in terms of the stuff we do in advocacy and legislative affairs and economic and business development, and then it's the association part of it, the providing the services, the programs, products that members are looking for. So there's kind of a mission part of it, and there's a kind of a ROI part of that organization.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we're going to take our second break here, and so we've got John up to he's running the Chamber of Commerce. In the next and last section, we'll talk to John about what he thinks about the city of Oshkosh, the struggles that we have, how the Chamber helps out the city of Oshkosh, and talk to him a little bit more about maybe some economic development and what he thinks the city of Oshkosh could use for economic development. So with that, stay with us, and we'll be right back after these messages.
On the surface, the simple pleasures in life are going on all around us. But inches beneath the surface, utility lines are carrying electricity, gas, and more to your home. Digger's Hotline helps avoid costly or dangerous mistakes. It doesn't matter how deep you're digging. Call 811 or click diggershotline.com 3 working days before you start your project, and we'll help take the risk out of digging. Protect your simple pleasures. Know what's below.
There is a place where history is captured in time, where the voices of past generations still discuss the days of success, of love, hope, and joy. Timeless, playful,
Welcome to my attic.
memorable. The Oshkosh Public Museum. Come for the sights, stay for the memories.
With the fees and everything that went up this year of 25 grand.
Yeah, it's tough. City seems to want to balance its budget on.
John Casper, President and CEO of the Oshkosh Chamber. I remember when I graduated college back in 1993, actually a little bit before that, I had to have an internship, and my internship,
Yes.
I don't know if you remember that, John,
Yes.
my internship was with the Oshkosh Chamber. I came, and I think that was the first time
Yeah.
that I met with you, and I worked there
Kurt
under
Foreman.
Kurt Foreman, yep,
Yep.
for a few months.
Kurt is still working in that business. He is, I want to say, in Oklahoma now.
Oh, okay.
And he's running a chamber there in their economic development activities. And Rob Clayman ran into him at a Site Selectors Guild this past spring,
Right.
when he was in Colorado. And
Right.
Kurt's doing well, and family's growing up. And
Yeah, he was always a good guy. I liked him.
Yeah.
Well, in the intro, John, I talked about you deal with a lot of people, and you deal with politicians. You had to deal with me, and sometimes we agree,
You're
sometimes
a
we
piece of
disagree.
cake.
I was a piece of cake. Okay, well, I'm not sure about that, but in all the people that you deal with, I mean, do you have a hard time with dealing with politicians?
Well, as I get older, I probably it's probably not a good thing, but I probably don't have the patience that I used to have.
Mm-hmm.
And part of when you're young and naive, it's a little different than once you start knowing a few things. And so I mean I've become less bashful about things, which sometimes is good and sometimes not so good. And, I can irritate people, and which I don't intend on doing that, but sometimes it does.
Just comes out.
And again, my approach is such that I'm kind of a sober guy, and so it. Even though I'm happy and jolly on the inside, you don't always see it on the outside.
Right, you're pretty calm, cool, and collected.
Well, I don't know about that. So.
Derek.
What do you
Ask
feel?
my kids.
Yeah, I'm sure. We'll get them on the show.
No, don't do that.
What do you feel some of the rewards that come from the job are?
Well, I think the biggest reward certainly is you work with some of the finest people in Oshkosh, and I mean that not just business people but community people. I've had been very fortunate to be able to work with some people that I've learned just tremendous amount from. I mean, there's some extremely intelligent people out there, good business people out there that are out taking risks, put their butts on the line, bet it all in a lot of cases, and you love seeing those guys succeed and doing well, employing people, and reaping the benefits of that hard work. And then there's times where you have people that are just rips my heart out in a lot of cases. They're going into business, and geez, I don't know if you got a good work plan there, a good business plan, and I know you're not capitalized to the extent you are, but they got this dream, and you don't want to squelch that dream, but they're just not going to make it, and they do it. And they lose it all a lot of times. I remember back early in my career, I was working with somebody, and they were looking to set up a retail store, and they were looking on the west side, and they liked this one spot. And I said, don't go there, because everybody who's gone there is just has failed. I mean, the traffic is good, but visibility is awful and that sort of thing. And they were set on doing that, and they did it, and 6 months later they went out of business, and they're still mad at me today. And I said, no, don't do that.
John, when I was on the council, one of the biggest issue was always development. Mm-hmm. And you deal with development on a daily basis, and people are, they're very angry about the Pioneer Inn property. I talked to the owner of the Pioneer Inn property. It's a privately held piece of property. Through the years, Oshkosh always gets compared to Appleton. I do it. I've done it myself, rightly or wrongly. Do you hear that comparison? And what are your thoughts on the comparison?
Well, there's certainly a pecking order up and down the valley. I mean, it all seems to go Fond du Lac, Oshkosh, Neenah, Menasha, Appleton, Green Bay, and Appleton and Green Bay fight among each other to see who really should be in that top spot. But we're a very competitive area. When things happen in Neenah, I mean, it's good for Oshkosh and vice versa. So I mean, people recognize there's this regional marketplace that we're all part of. But when it comes down to specific business or development, I mean, we all want it in our communities. So we're going to be as competitive as we possibly can, and make sure that we can put the best foot forward and the best package together if it needs to be something like that to get here. But I think that's still there yet. We always struggle with where people, and we had a conversation yesterday about this. Where people live. They may work here, but they may live in Appleton or Neenah and that sort of thing. And a lot of times that's kind of a result of husbands and wives both working. One travels this way, one travels that way, and a good midpoint might be Appleton. Husband or wife works in Green Bay and the other works in Oshkosh. So so there's a lot of dynamics at play here in terms of where people reside, and it kind of reinforces some of that Oshkosh, Appleton, and a lot of it's perception. I mean, I think the community certainly has the image of being a manufacturing town. 22% of our economic labor market is tied up in manufacturing. But we certainly strive to be more. We want to be more white collar. And Appleton seems to have that position in the marketplace.
A little more swagger.
To a certain extent. I mean, but we have more attributes. I mean, take a look at the riverfront and what we're doing at the riverfront. I think one of the best things the city of Oshkosh ever did was invest in in that plan to do the Riverwalk. I think you were on council at that time, and I think Dick Wallink and Jackson Guinea put that stuff in place, and that is going to prove to be a good and wise investment for the community, because we're going to be able to create more activities around that, more development, and it gives us an opportunity to reclaim some of those former industrial sites that used to be there because of the river.
Let's talk a little bit about manufacturing. Now, you said 22% of the jobs are currently in manufacturing. You also stated, and it was true, that Oshkosh used to be a very conservative community, not so much anymore. Years ago, we used to have breweries, we have door manufacturers, foundries. Mercury Marine had a huge presence in Oshkosh, and those things have they've gone by the wayside. Is that indicative to Oshkosh, or is that a national thing? And what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ebb and flow of business. It's that business cycle. I mean, take a look at just if you want to compare Oshkosh and Appleton, for example, take a look at Appleton. I mean, the paper industry was king. Yeah. And paper industry isn't near what it used to be, what it is now compared to what it used to be. So, there's dynamics in the marketplace that forces that expansion, contraction, and that sort of thing. And that's kind of going to constantly always evolve and going to change. 50 years from now, it'll look probably vastly different in terms of what that marketplace is. We're all companies are all competing globally. I mean, we have competition not just here in the valley, in the state, and coast to coast, but it's tough out there. I mean, you got to be competitive, and the playing field is now flat and it's global, and we're competing against China, we're competing against India and other places.
Yeah.
Talking a little bit about things changing, so to speak, businesses changing, the climate. What have you seen in your time with the chamber? How has that evolved? How has that changed in its dynamic as it relates to the community?
Chamber chamber membership is harder to come by. I think years ago, I think people looked at if they're a business person, they don't have to join the chamber first of all. I mean, you have to give them reasons to join. It's not. I wish we could just tax in Europe. In Europe, you have to become a member of the chamber.
Is that right?
Yeah. I had lunch with the owners of Continental Gibraltar the other day from Spain, and they said up to until recently, if you had to join the chamber, it was legislated. I wish we could do that here. Get back on council and help us do that.
Yeah, right.
But people are looking at chamber membership, and at one point it was like, well, I'm a business in Oshkosh. That's something I should do. It's a corporate responsibility of mine. That has changed. You have to be able to provide some services. People are looking for that return on that investment. So from that standpoint, we had to really take a look at the mix of businesses we have and make sure that we're providing products for certain niches within that market. So what we offer a small company, whether it's in educational programs or even health insurance or stuff like that, an Oshkosh corporation, for example, has no need for that. I mean, they got a buying power significant enough to just, provide that programming specifically for themselves, or get better deals than we could provide to our health to our members, for example. So,
Right.
So I think that's been probably the biggest issue. And then the other thing is, I think companies are more apt to provide financial resources to address a problem. Years ago, companies were in a position to provide people, volunteers to help work on things and that sort of thing. And that corporate involvement from large companies isn't as significant as it used to be. Bank presidents, for example, part of their jobs, a good share of their jobs were, being in the community, involving themselves on whether it's a chamber or, we have people running for council and that sort of thing. Now you just don't see that anymore. I mean, you just, I don't know, the last time we had, probably John Delantoni was probably the last time we had a city council member from a large, employer here in Oshkosh.
Yeah.
And that was, how many years ago?
Yeah, Oshkosh, gosh.
Yeah, so, so that's kind of what changed a lot. And, I think more demands are being put on corporations to, deliver on a quarterly basis, deliver that value back to shareholders, and they're sticking to knitting, and they just don't have that as much time. Not that the interest isn't there, they just don't have the time that they can invest in people getting more involved in the community.
Okay.
So how has the chamber adapted to, in essence, deal with that?
Well, we've adapted where it's become far more staff-driven than it would have been, 20, 25 years ago. We get, we're paid to, deliver on a strategic plan and a program of work, and then we have professional staff that we hire to. And we do have volunteers that help us work on some of those things, but it's really brunt of the work is on the backs of paid staff that we have. So,
John, I remember years ago when I first got on the council, was trying to get on the council. The chamber always endorsed candidates. You sent out a questionnaire, 10, 15 questions. You sent that back. You had a process of endorsing candidates, and I think that. Just running last time, I know that you do send out the questions. It gets published in your flyers, but you don't have the endorsement process anymore. Why did you have endorsement process, and why do you not have an endorsement process?
Well, it's kind of funny how we got into that a number of years ago. People always assumed that we were doing that. They'd say, "Oh, XYZ, that's the chamber's candidate," and. So we thought, well, if we're going to be kind of blamed for doing that, or
just do it, right?
Let's do it. Let's be upfront about it. Let's say, these are issues that are important to us. Interview candidates and see if they line up well to them, and then say, these three candidates are the best people from our perspective to be elected to office. And when we did that, 80% of our candidates that we endorsed did win, but. As we got into that, it actually created some issues for Chamco because they receive public funding. Chamber doesn't receive public funding, and they were concerned that if one of our endorsements may hurt their funding stream from the city. So we were asked to kind of back away from that activity, get more involved with just primarily issue advocacy, and then do the questionnaires and line people up and say, these are the issues, these are the questions we asked, this is how they responded, and you make your choice up. It's two different approaches. Frankly, I kind of believe it's better to be upfront on that. Support the people that are going to be in the best position to support the agenda, because we are a special interest group. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that, and that's not a bad thing. So it's far easier to work with people who kind of believe the same things you do philosophically than it is to change somebody's mind once they're in office. So.
Okay. I do have a question. I think it's important. We're down to like 2 or 3 minutes, I think, here. The newspaper years ago was, I think, very influential. They endorsed candidates, and they had a large presence in Oshkosh. Now that's dwindling. By and large, the stories that you see regarding Oshkosh, do you see them as positive from the paper?
Well, they're becoming fewer and fewer. They have, you remember back in the old days. I mean, they had a lot of reporters. They had, several work in the community, government, beat, business, and that sort of thing. They just have fewer people doing those sorts of things. I think they do the best they can with the resources that they do have. Getting information these days is always a challenge. Finding the truth is always a challenge, and it's. I think they try to do the best they can. Sometimes I read an article and I go, boy, I was at that meeting.
I don't remember it like that.
It doesn't remember that. And sometimes, last couple articles they wrote as related to us, and they got them completely wrong, which I wasn't real happy about. And we asked for a correction, and they put I think the correction online, and not in the paper. And it's like, well, they did correct it, but it wasn't
not to the viewers that.
I mean, people read the paper, and they're not necessarily. I read the paper because it's kind of my routine, and I'm not as apt to go online and search for articles.
Right.
So, but it's it's a lot of times it's just resource allocation and having fewer and fewer people.
Right. Okay. Take about 30 seconds, John. If I'm out there, if I'm a business person, why should I join the chamber?
Well, if you want to be connected and want to understand what's happening in town, kind of be on the front line of things, people are, hopefully they buy into our mission, the role of advocacy, the role of business development, and being an organization that's there for you when you need us. That deserves support from the business community. Because if we don't get that, nobody else is going to do that.
Okay.
We don't get money from the county, the city, and those sorts of things. But we also provide some very direct services that people need, especially small companies need, that they can't afford it themselves. We can provide it through membership, and they can get some darn good programming for a very small investment.
Okay, good. Well, unfortunately, John, we are out of time. On behalf of Derek and myself and the volunteers here, we would like to thank you for coming and talking about John Casper.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
And if
Really
you'd like to talk
appreciate
to Mr. Casper, Chamber building is on Jackson Street, or you can call at 303-2266.
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Casper, I'm sure, would be more than happy to speak to you about becoming a member of the Chamber, or if you have some issues or whatever in the city, give him a call. So with that, thanks again, John, for being here, and we hope that you'll join us next time on Oshkosh Diaries. Thanks.
That was fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.